Women's Six Nation, folks, the penultimate round. I've watched these three games. We'll go over some key events, some stats, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on the games at the weekend. I've got them in this order because that's the order I watched them in. I think I'm pretty adept now at picking which the best game is going to be. When I say the best game, I don't necessarily mean the best team. I basically mean the best watch. And Italy-Scotland is the one I picked to be the best watch, and I think I was right because there was a lot of rain, but it was a close game. There was an actual lead change, a bit of a tussle, which is kind of what you like to see when you're watching a rugby game, especially as a neutral. I know if you're an England fan, you'd love seeing your team just whip out these hidings, but as a neutral, there's a bit less interest in that for me anyway. But anyway, we'll start with Italy and Scotland because, like I said, it was a pretty tight game. Both sides exchanged penalties early. There wasn't a lot of scoring in like the first 20 minutes. I think it was 3 apiece after like 22 minutes. Scotland did manage to get the first try of the game through Wassell, through basically just grinding through the phases. The TMO had to check, I think, a bit of everything in this game. They had to check the grounding, but it was given. So 10 points apiece. The Scots go in with a halftime lead. Remember, the Scots at this point are still winless, and so were the Italians going into this one. So in its own regard, kind of a fair bit to play for because nobody wants to be the team that finishes in the spoon position. But there you go. Second half, the Italians did their same thing with advantage. They went through some phases as well. That was another one given by the TMO. Interestingly, that one was an on-field no try. They had to check the grounding, but it was given. I think it was given pretty quickly as well. The TMO didn't seem to be mucking around, which was pleasing. And that made it 10 points apiece. And that's when it really started raining. I think it maybe a few minutes earlier it had really started piddling down over there in Italy. Italy took the lead on 54 with a penalty, which was, I guess pleasing because I felt like watching the first half they were kind of the team under pressure. But, second half it certainly went Italy's way. And then they got one from close range on 70 minutes. The TMO had to have another look. I was getting a bit frustrated, but then when they did slow it down, the ball kind of spilled out. So I think it was worth a look, but it was another kind of pretty easy TMO call. So 20 points to 10 with 10 minutes to go. Seems like 2 scores is going to be a bit too much for Scotland, but they did kick a penalty on 75 to bring it to kind of game on, but they weren't able to get any more points. The Scots, the Italians hold in that really driving rain. So yeah, interestingly, the position and territory is pretty even. Interestingly, though, I think a key stat, points per visit to 22. I love that stat on the Six Nations website. Points per visit to the 22. The Italians are at 4.2, whereas the Scots are at 1.2. So just that little bit more clinical, eh? Penalties conceded, 10 by the Italians, 13 by the Scots. I think the majority of the Scots were at the breakdown, to be honest. The loose head prop, Melissa Betoni, not only gets that first drive for the Italians, but she gets 64 run meters and plays the full 80. Huge shift. Lock Sarah Bonner for Scotland has 17 from 17 tackles. So a big old shift. But yeah, congratulations to Italy. First win of the season. They're 1-3. Away to Wales next, which will be a pretty interesting game. And Scotland are away to Ireland, which should also be pretty interesting. So the final round in terms of the matchups looks like it's going to be the most interesting one yet. The second game, Wales and France, is automatically a little bit less interesting because I assumed France would beat Wales pretty handily. And they did it. There was all French pressure early, and Sansuis is honestly an amazing player. France have got probably the best men's and women's halfback in the world from what I've seen. Sansuis, when I've seen her playing, I haven't seen that much women's rugby, but bro, she is just magic. Unbelievable stuff. She gets the first try of the game. Of course, it's her, is what I wrote in my notes because she is just a part of everything. So 7-0, and the French don't score their next try until like the 20th minute, so it's a 12-minute gap. But you can feel it's coming. The Welsh are having to do a lot of defending. They had to TMO check that one because there was a potential offside, but they didn't really have a camera angle that showed it clearly. So benefit of the doubt given to Boujard, who goes over for that one. So 14-0. France on the kick return on 24 minutes. That one's Jacquet. The steps in the build-up are honestly, again, pretty phenomenal. So it's 19-0, and it's looking like it's going to be an absolute hiding which I guess you could say it is at 33-5, but it looked like it was going to be a lot worse. The one the Welsh I think will look back on the hardest is the second Saint-Suisse try, which is a Welsh 5 metre scrum on their own feed, and then the ball just pops out, and who's the first one to it? It's that bloody Saint-Suisse, eh? So it's 26-0. Wales did have a chance finally before half-time, their first real attacking chance of the game before half-time, but they couldn't score from it. So yeah, 26-0 at half-time is pretty rough, but you can see from the scoreboard that France don't score that many in the second half. There's one through Chimulia where she runs a great line, runs through two defenders, kind of at that right angle to make it 33-0, and Wales get a consolation one right at the death through Harry's. But yeah, the French, I still don't reckon they're gonna get. I don't think they'll beat England based on what we've seen thus far, but they are certainly. Right now, to me, it seems like there's England, then a gap, then France, and then a gap. And then the rest of the teams are all, within kind of touching distance of each other. So, yeah, that's why it's this Six Nations. It's always like France and whoever's probably going to be France, England and whoever's going to be England, and then the other game is the most interesting one. That's kind of been the logic I've been going with it. But then the final round, it's actually France and England playing each other. So all the games, I think, become a little bit more interesting. But maybe that's just me. Possessions, 54-46 to Wales, actually, but offloads, 10-4 to France. Handling errors, 11-5 to France. I guess if they're going to chuck around a bit, then they're going to maybe potentially risk more handling errors. Line breaks, 6-1 is pretty telling to France. And Wales' scrum was under just a lot of pressure, eh? So, yeah, 33-5. It's not an absolute, it's not that scoreline, 69-0, but still pretty comfortable. Jasmine Joyce, 85 run meters. 2 broken tackles, but she couldn't stop that second try with the old aerial ball. And Saint-Suisse, man, 2 tries, a try assist, 62 meters, and 7 broken tackles. Man, she's just absolutely something else. And speaking of something else, England. I always feel like I'm a little bit negative with England, just because they win so easily every time. But to be fair, this game, the first half, albeit pretty much solely played in the Irish half, was interesting in that it was only 10-0 at half time. Yeah, it was very windy, seemingly, and England were relentless on attack, but they couldn't crack, and I think the Irish have had issues with players kind of leaving with the sevens, right? So, yeah, the fact that it was only 10-0 was engaging in itself, and in the second half, the Irish just get blown away. So yeah, encouraging first half, but you don't really judge it just on one half of rugby. But yeah, still, it's a maul try for England to start with, and the maul is just brutal. If France are going to have any chance against the English the next game, it's going to have to be practiced in training that they have to stop that English maul because it's brutal. And the second one I think came from. Wasn't that one a Irish mucked up line out? There were so many tries, I try to remember them now, but was that one chalked off? No, the TMO chalked that one off. The other one came not long later with just England with the relentless attack, but it was 10-0 after 16 minutes. Ireland opted for 3 on 21 minutes. I guess you want to get on the scoreboard, but it was a bit of a stinker, the kick from Cronin. So, yeah, unfortunate they couldn't get on the board. There was a bit of handbags on 34 minutes. There was the English 9 pushed one of the Irish girls in the face, but there might have been a little bit of her being pushed on the ground, which kind of led up to that. So a little bit of bad blood. But yeah, it was 10-0 at half time. 10-0 at half time is still, that's a game. The second half, 59 answer points, not so much. We don't need to go through all the tries, but the Irish had trouble twice with upright tackles. One was a yellow card through Wall, the blindside flanker, and then Naopu on 66 minutes got a red for pretty much the same thing, but it had slightly more force in it. Even the first one could have been a red, but again, she was kind of static in her tackle position. But if you're going to be that high, you're really going to put yourself at risk of getting carded. So line out moves, maul tries, I mean, yeah, the steps from Kildun was pretty good, but I think maybe she needs to pass. And she still scores her second one, but she probably could have passed it against France. Maybe she'll need to work on the passing, but yeah, ultimately, close range, line out moves, like some of the stuff just looked like it was straight off the training paddock, eh? So yeah, England, man, 69-0. They're a bloody good team. I just find it's tough to get excited about them because it's like watching, I think I said last time, it's like watching New Zealand play Tonga or somebody like that. Like, yeah, it's hard to get that excited when it's that scoreline. But am genuinely looking forward to watching England and France. That'll probably be the first game I watch in that final round because I think France are the only team that's looking anywhere near like giving them a run for their money. But we'll have to kind of wait and see. The English team is just looking phenomenal. Roland, the fullback, 2 try assists, 7 broken tackles, 114 run meters. Marley Packer gets player of the match, 128 run meters. Plus, she got a try as well. She's lethal. Hannah O'Connor, the number 8, made 18 of 20 tackles. I think the open side made like 23. So it was a lot of tackling practice for the Irish in that one. But yeah, 69-0. Good crowd, honestly. But yeah, pretty one-sided one. So yeah, we're 1 round to go. England and France is obviously the big one. Like I mentioned, there's also Wales against Italy and Scotland and Ireland. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the final round. I do think it's going to be the most interesting of the lot. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on the games, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.